Oma and konnichiwa. Plus, yabaseo. Will here at the POLIT'AI CHI. Excuse me, talking briefly and concisely about, I dare say, the classiest president we've maybe ever had. Certainly in the modern era. A lot of my original, not so much original, first subs will tell you, one catchphrase that I have been using from day one, whether doing a voiceover such as I am now, or live from the set on camera. You must conduct yourself with class and dignity at all times. This was that measure of a man. A life well lived, little montage coming up here, or esplanade of a vignettes put together. Courtesy to Fox. Got a couple more coming up. This is just the quickie version. Thanks to, Brett Bear. Roll it.
Every single day when I walked into this office from this door over here, you feel a sense of awe and a sense of respect. And I tried to treat the office with respect. But I have many happy memories.
Did you hear that, DJT?
Life and legacy. We have been talking about it all morning. George H.W. Bush, former president, 41st president of the United States, has died at the age of 94, and the stories we've been hearing from people who served with him, it's just been remarkable. They talk about a life of public service.
And how remarkable it is to me, the fact that in all of these same conversations and stories we hear, that it touches on what an impressive man he was, beyond words, and also had the ability to touch and make connections with people at all levels, macro and micro.
It's tough to boil down a life, but chief political anchor Brett Baer did his very best. He did a pretty good job. Here's a look at the incredible life and legacy of President George H.W. Bush.
For a new breeze is blowing, and a world refreshed by freedom seems reborn. For in man's heart, if not in fact, the day of the dictator is over.
George Bush's hardest task as president was giving the green light for Operation Desert Storm. But he is credited with rescuing the tiny, oil-rich nation of Kuwait from Saddam Hussein's million-man army of Iraq. Before George Herbert Walker Bush took his first step into the White House, he learned to walk in Kennebunkport, Maine. Born June 12, 1924, in the town of Milton, Massachusetts, to a family already deeply involved in public service, he was the second of 5 children to Dorothy and Senator Prescott Bush. With high school behind him, George was accepted at Yale University, but put his education on hold. The start of the Second World War beckoned him to serve his country instead. In 1942, George Bush celebrated his 18th birthday by enlisting in the U.S. Naval Reserve. Within a year, he was Ensign Bush, the youngest fighter pilot in the Navy. Taking part in 58 combat missions in the Pacific Theater, Bush was flying his plane on a special bombing mission over China when he was shot down by the Japanese.
Yeah, that's bears repeating.
50 freaking. He survived, though his crew did not.
I'm floating around in this raft, paddling, and then all of a sudden saw this conning tower come up and saw the submarine surface.
With the end of the war in sight, Bush set his sights on Barbara Pierce. The two wed in 1945, while Bush was still in the Navy. They would have 6 children, including our 43rd president, George W. Bush, and popular Florida Governor Jeb. Bush left the Navy and graduated from Yale before he and Barbara moved to Texas to find his dreams on an oil field. By the age of 30, he was co-founder and president of Zapata Offshore, which pioneered experimental drilling equipment. But just like his father, Bush was attracted to public service and politics. After losing his first political race for a Senate seat in 1964, he was elected to the House of Representatives 2 years later, serving 2 terms. Encouraged by Richard Nixon to run again for the Senate in 1970, he was defeated a second time. He moved on to high government positions. In 1971, Richard Nixon appointed him ambassador to the United Nations. And in 1973, he became chairman of the Republican National Committee at the height of the Watergate scandal. In that role, Bush urged Nixon to resign for the good of the party.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
President Gerald Ford sent Bush to China as chief of the U.S. Liaison Office. A short time later, Ford called him home to be director of the CIA, and Bush was credited with bringing morale back to the agency. Bush left in 1977 when President Carter entered the White House. By 1979, he was ready to get back into the political ring.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am a candidate for President of the United States.
In a natural progression, Bush became the Republican Party's nominee in 1988, with Senator Dan Quayle from Indiana as his running mate. The Republican team defeated Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis and Texas Senator Lloyd Bentsen.
I, George Herbert Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
During his presidency, the Soviet Union dissolved, the Berlin Wall fell, and Manuel Noriega was arrested, securing the Panama Canal. But everything came to a head when Iraq's Saddam Hussein invaded neighboring Kuwait.
We're not walking away until our mission is done, until the invader is out of Kuwait.
President Bush reacted quickly, committing over 400,000 U.S. troops and building a strong coalition of allies. Operation Desert Storm had begun. The majority of America supported the president's decision to throw Saddam Hussein back into Iraq, and Bush's popularity rating hit an all-time high. Most thought he was unbeatable for a second term. But a broken campaign promise,
Read my lips.
would come back to haunt the 41st president. And in the fall of 1992, with the war a distant memory, George Bush lost re-election to former Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton. Bush traveled to Kuwait to commemorate the Gulf War in 1993. An assassination plot on his life was uncovered, but Bush was unharmed. It was later discovered the poorly orchestrated plan was the work of the Iraqi intelligence service. A Kuwaiti court would convict all but one of the defendants. Bush retired to Texas with Barbara, getting in a few rounds of horseshoes and celebrating countless birthdays by parachuting out of planes, spending time with the family in Maine and reliving memories of when he was a boy.
I can honestly say that the three most rewarding titles bestowed upon me are the three that I've got left: a husband, a father, and a granddad.
While retired, his life was active until the end, joining forces with former political foe Bill Clinton to raise money for the victims of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami and Hurricane Katrina in 2005. The former presidents formed a close friendship, continuing their charity work and enjoying annual lunches at Bush's home in Kennebunkport, and using his experience and insights to serve as a quiet advisor to his eldest son, the 43rd president. Here, attending George W. Bush's Presidential Library dedication in 2013 and sharing a few words.
We're glad to be here. God bless America, and thank you very much.
Bush even kept up with public debate by joining Twitter, where he often shared photos of his colorful socks that became part of his signature look. Age brought health challenges, of course, a form of Parkinson's disease that left him in a wheelchair, and brief hospital stays in his 90s for pneumonia, bronchitis, and a fall in his home. But not enough to keep him out of the limelight, throwing out the first pitch before a 2016 baseball game and pregame ceremonies months later at the Super Bowl in his Houston hometown. Reuniting with his former running mate and Vice President Dan Quayle in July, and then catching a glimpse of the rare eclipse that crossed the country alongside his family in Maine in August. One of Bush's last public appearances was at his beloved wife Barbara's funeral, where he met with former presidents, first ladies, and the current First Lady, Melania Trump. Bush recently returned to his vacation hometown of Kennebunkport, Maine, joining fellow veterans for a pancake breakfast before he was hospitalized for low blood pressure and fatigue. This was the first time in decades that neither he nor his wife attended the annual Memorial Day parade. He wrote in a tweet, he is, quote, forever grateful not only to those patriots who made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, but also the Gold Star families whose heritage is imbued with their honor and heroism. Known for his maturity and straightforward approach, George H.W. Bush called this country to be better in hopes of inspiring the people to be great.
I think historians are going to say that we did pretty well, and that's all right for me. I'm not in any rush.
The first president, George H.W. Bush, on how he would want to be remembered.
Honor. Service and honor. I'm very at peace now with myself and with our record. And I have no regrets. I had my chance. And as Mom said, I did my